Good morning. Hope you're having a great day. Today's video is going to be about imitation. And Paul says in Philippians 3:17, he says, following my example, observe those who walk according to the pattern you have in us. So today's video is going to be kind of on the shorter side, but we're going to talk about imitation. Who are you imitating? Who are you watching? Who are you observing? He says to imitate him in several places in the Bible, but 1 Corinthians 4:16 says, therefore I exhort you, be imitators of me. Exhortation, it's not a word that we use a lot in our day and time, but to exhort means to strongly and thoroughly encourage someone. It comes from the Latin word exhortare, I think I'm saying that correctly, which means to thoroughly encourage. And it can have a little bit of a gentle rebuke quality to it, but Paul says, I exhort you, I strongly encourage you to be an imitator of me. 1 Corinthians 11:1 says, be imitators of me just as I also am of Christ. Paul had the blueprint of who he was imitating, and he was trying to produce carbon copies of himself and of Jesus. 1 Thessalonians 1:6 and 7 says, you also became imitators of us and of the Lord, having received the word in much tribulation with the joy of the Holy Spirit. So even though they were facing tribulation, which we believe meant just intense persecution for being a believer in that day and age, they still were receiving the message and receiving their lives with joy in the Holy Spirit. And he says, even regardless of that, imitate me. So that's what we're going to talk about today. In Philippians 3:7, he says, following my example, observe those who walk according to the pattern. So you have to ask yourself, who are you observing? Are you observing people on YouTube like me or like others? Make sure that they're saying the right things, that they're getting their knowledge from the Bible, because you may be unwittingly observing someone or following someone who is not going to lead you closer to Christ or closer in your relationship with God. But he says, observe. Are you observant? Do you observe the way people walk? Just not the way they talk, but the way they walk. To be observant, it means to hold back, to observe, to use your eyes, your ears, your senses, to say, what is this person not only saying, but what are they walking? Paul says to observe those who walk according to the pattern. There are a lot of people talking. If you're following someone on Facebook and they are saying they're a believer, and then all of a sudden they just post this hateful post about someone or a situation, you have to ask yourself, how are they walking? Is this someone that I want to observe and imitate? We all have to be careful of this. I told you in another video that I was involved in a religious cult-like church for many years, and it became about observing people to do what they did, to follow their example. But sometimes I wasn't checking to see if what they were doing or saying was actually biblical. So for me, it became about following man and following a personality and following someone very charismatic. This is something very easy for us to do as humans. We are community creatures. We are creatures that enjoy relationship. And part of that is imitation. I have 2 young grandsons, and let me tell you, they're imitating everything that's happening around them. And so Paul says, in this way, be an imitator of me as I follow Christ. So my question to you, my friends, is who are you watching? Who are you observing? And what are you getting out of that observation? Are you seeing their lives reflect Christ, and are you imitating those parts of them? I will tell you, sometimes when we observe people, we see some things in them that are worthy of imitation, then of course other things that are not worthy of imitation. And I think that's part of being human, but we have to be careful about who we're observing and imitating. In 1 Corinthians 11:1, like he said, just as I also am of Christ. Paul had the blueprint. He says, I know who I'm following and who I'm imitating, and I'm doing that very closely, so therefore you can follow me as I follow Christ. Do you have people in your life that are following Christ closely, and are you observing their lives and being inspired by what you see, and are you imitating them? Well, how did he imitate Christ? Well, we know from Christ, we read about in Philippians 2, there was self-sacrifice. Christ poured out himself. He had humility of mind. He was obedient even to the point of death. It says that Christ had the attitude of putting others' needs above his own and being a bondservant, emptying of the self, and his life was about what God wanted him to do. And so Paul says, I'm trying to do that too. And as I do that, follow me. So that's all I have for today. But tomorrow we're going to talk about what we've learned in chapters 1 through 3 in Paul that is worthy of imitation. So what I want you to do is go back through chapters 1 through 3 and write down everything you can think of about Paul, so that when he says, imitate me as I imitate Christ, you'll have very specific things to take away. Paul did this. That was like Christ. And so I'm going to imitate that. Okay, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.